So with respect to SDG 12, the global material footprint is rapidly growing, outpacing population and economic growth. Developed countries use 1/5 of natural resources to produce same amount of economic output as developing countries. That means there are many developing countries, a few developed countries. So there is a gap between the investment and production in both the countries, developed and developing, right? So there is a disparity. Material footprint per capita in high income countries is 60% higher than in upper middle income countries and more than 13 times the level of low income countries. So see the disparity. Nearly 100 countries are actively adopting policies and measures to promote sustainable consumption and production. So environmental deterioration has followed economic and social advancement. So at the cost of environment, well, this has primarily grown, somewhat this has also grown throughout the past century, jeopardizing the very systems that are essential to human existence and continued growth. It will be necessary to alter consumption and production habits in order to prevent the ecosystem from suffering irreparable harm. Additionally, residential energy usage accounts for 29% of worldwide energy consumption and 21% of CO2 emissions among consumers. Businesses should look for innovative solutions that support sustainable pattern of consumption and production. It is necessary to have a greater awareness of how products and services influence the environment and society, both in terms of how long they last and how lifestyle choices affect how they are used. You can see it here. From year 2000 to 2050, it is projected we are somewhere at this stage, right? So resource consumption is going to get tripled if it is business as usual. If the way it is progressing, without sustainable development, practices, is going to triple. That is the projection. Many of the circular businesses activities specified in SDG 12 are very important, including water management, waste management, sustainable goods and services, sustainable supply chains, and renewable energy synergies. The industrial contamination of land and water can be reduced by using circular economy techniques. To solve this particular issue, it is crucial to follow the circular, rethinking, like R's. There are several R's. You may be knowing like 3 R's, there are 5 R's, 7 R's, 9 R's, and even 11 R's, and even more than that, right? So those R's actually, if you see, they help in multiple, stages. The first one comes, like rethinking or reviewing when we make our decisions, and that after that, reducing, redesigning, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, remanufacturing, recycling, repurposing, etc., etc. Sustainable development depends on separating the use of natural resources from economic growth. The entire quantity of natural resources consumed in economic activities or domestic material consumption grew from 1.2 kg to 1.3 kg per unit of GDP between year 2010 and 2010. According to global statistics, in the same time frame, total domestic material consumption increased from 48.7 billion tons to 71 billion tons. Natural resource consumption is on the rise globally, notably in Eastern Asia, which contributes to the growth. Coming down to SDG 15, so we have 10 million hectares of forest are destroyed every year. Almost 90% of global deforestation is due to agricultural expansion. Well, agricultural lands are needed, but they are happening at the cost of taking away the forests, and even residential industrial growths and expansions of the cities and towns and villages is also happening at the cost of loss of the forests. So yeah, livestock grazing, cropland expansion, if you see 49.6%, livestock grazing 38.5%. And then 133 parties have ratified the Nagoya Protocol, which addresses access to genetic resources and their fair and equitable use. Biodiversity is largely neglected in COVID-19 recovery spending. Around 40,000 species are documented to be at risk of extinction. 40,000 species, not 1, 2 or like 10 or 100, 40,000 to be at the risk of extinction over the coming decades. So, and there may be even more, but at least this much are documented and are on the record that these many species are on the brink of extinction. On the earth, trees cover close to 31% of the land. The livelihood of almost 1.6 billion people depends on trees. The deterioration of land directly affects over 75% of the world's poor. More than 80% of all terrestrial species of animals, plants and insects reside in forest. So you can just imagine, the loss of habitat which will happen, for the majority of the, like a species, 80% of all terrestrial species, However, more quickly than at any previous moment in human history, biodiversity is disappearing. This is the most hazardous, most actually crucial kind of like a change. Between 2000 and 2015, the terrestrial surface of the planet is thought to have deteriorated by 20%. So again, there is another cause, like a deterioration of like the terrestrial surface, this land surface, what we have, so that's getting, like a deteriorated, degraded. As they can provide advantages that will strengthen human resilience to the effects of climate change, biodiversity and the ecosystem services that it supports can also serve as the foundation for policies for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Habitat loss for all species, a decline in freshwater quality, an uptick in soil erosion, land degradation and increased carbon dioxide emissions are all consequences of deforestation and forest degradation. In other words, ignoring trees has an impact on the health of the world and our communities. For the challenges mentioned in SDG 15, organic agriculture and organic waste management, fertilizers, soil restoration and biochar are beneficial. This is similar to circular farming in order to benefit both forestry and biodiversity, regenerative agroforestry techniques, multi-species planting, so that not just one preferred cash crop is planted all the time, but multi-species like plantations, and industrial symbiosis in forestry can increase resilience. Sustainable forest management also requires cyclical water management techniques in dry areas such as fog harvesting. So yeah, this is also one of the like a techniques if you go to the cold deserts such as like Ladakh region of India. Okay, so there getting like a water is a challenge. So some local techniques have been adopted over there to catch like this fog, the tiny like a water droplets which are suspended in the air and harvest them for water collection. Coming down to SDG 17, so there are some numbers. Net ODA total $149 billion in 2018, down by 2.7% from 2017. So that's a relation you can see. In 2018, bilateral ODA to the LDCs fell by 3% in real terms from 2017. Aid to Africa fell by 4%. Okay, so remittance is like usually like this migrated population actually sends some money back. That is remittance will be the largest source of external financing in low and middle income countries. From here actually a huge migration actually takes place, temporary or permanent also, but mostly like a floating a population which goes to the like other places and they send back like their earnings to their homes. Current commitment to statistics, 0.33% of total ODA must be doubled to meet statistical capacity building objectives by 2030. In sub-Saharan Africa, less than 1/4 of national statistical plans are fully funded. Okay. Yeah, over 80% of people in developed countries are online, like internet connections, compared to 45% in developing countries and only 20% in low developing countries. In addition, developed countries will need to fulfill their official development assistance commitments. Multi-stakeholder partnerships will be crucial to leverage the interlinkages between the sustainable development goals to enhance their effectiveness and impact, as well as to accelerate progress in achieving the goals. You can see this figure over here. Collaboration is required for the transition to the circular economy, which calls for systematic transformation. A municipal government can establish the goal, specify the parameters and support experimentation. So you can see in this one, circular design points, optimal usage, and circular design points further. And then we have, like added values system on this side and retained values on this side. So we have, like a retail, assembly, manufacturing, extraction, and the values like reusing, redistributing, refurbishing, remanufacturing, recycling are kind of employed over here, bringing out like a change. So design products and materials with the aim of long-term value retention, product design, circular materials, etc. That's why I mentioned earlier, designing, investing more into design is very crucial, for improving things. Optimal use, support better usage and product productivity, product as a service, we discussed life extension, sharing platforms, sell and buyback, those thrift stores, repairs and maintenance services, are very essential. Capture value after user life, second-hand seller, refurbisher, recycler, recaptured material supplier, etc. So those should become part of the mainstream, like a system. Researchers and knowledge organizations may create fresh perspectives and resources, substantiate theories and increase awareness. Local business owners have the courage and creativity to take chances, drive change, and achieve growth. Educating the future leaders, workers, and customers is equally as important as ensuring meaningful engagement from people to locals. The concept of value hill illustrates, how the circular, like R's of rethinking, reducing, redesigning, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, remanufacturing, recycling, repurposing, etc., like all of those R's require businesses to establish new loops in their value chain. Okay, like we saw, in the previous, like in here, if you see, this is a, like a value addition which is happening, through these R's, right? And again, it can lead, like improvements at each of these stages and optimize, the whole, like a chain, value chain. A mutually symbiotic reliance is created by the idea of industrial symbiosis, in which one company's trash is another's resource. So as I said earlier, someone's, like a waste, which is, exiting, like that cycle, can become, like the ingredient or, like a nutrient for the next cycle, right? So from one loop, it can enter to the another loop and so on, right? So multiple ways, this cycle of sustainability can take place. So now in this one, we will see, topic of design for sustainability. Well, sustainability, I think by the time you know what is sustainability, and designing for it, designing for sustainability, that is, like a design for sustainability, DFS, we will see in detail. Well, DFS is an all-encompassing design methodology. Like we have been listening, the more focus, more aim, more attention is needed, at the design stage. Because if this is improved, all of the rest of the cycles and the stages are going to get, like improved. Okay. So this is established, like the emphasis and the consideration at the drawing board stage is essential and crucial, for the success of overall, like this value chain. So it says, this is such a like an all-encompassing design methodology that places an emphasis on activities, positive effects on both people and the environment. Okay, so keeping those considerations in mind, and then you go to the drawing board and design the product. It emphasizes the use of environmentally friendly materials and resources efficiency in the development of goods and procedures. The DFS technique is sometimes referred to as life cycle design approach, since it takes into account details regarding the phases of a product's whole lifespan. So LCA approach also gets utilized in DFS, like assignments. Currently, the DFS techniques is being used more often, particularly for the creation of new products and processes as a result of consumer and industry efforts to become more sustainable. Product innovation is one of the areas where the strategy is frequently used. Current new product innovation focuses on the consequences on people and the environment as well as profitability. So all three. In contrast to the older product innovation methods that only focused on profitability. So in the conventional linear, like design process, it used to be the focus of only economic gain. But with this, the focus has changed. DFS of goods and processes includes the use of eco-friendly or green materials as one of its methods by allowing products to be recycled, reused, or organically biodegradable at the end of their useful lives. Organically biodegradable. Maybe you would like to search more on this. The use of green materials in product creation lessens the impact on the environment, of course. In addition, green materials are frequently made from plants, which have the benefit of endless resources and renewability in contrast to traditional engineering materials like minerals. Because now once it is like a manufactured, again it's very difficult to like bring it back to the original like a state of like a material, which have limited and non-renewable resources. When these attributes of green materials are used in goods and processes, the consequences of high energy consumption and large carbon footprint are considerably diminished over the course of the full product lifespan. You can see like this illustration, the different like aspects, different keywords associated with this. So there is this word cloud from this source. So design for environmental impact, life cycle factor you need to consider, environmental effect, ecological balance and efficiency, regional and global impact overall. In design for recyclability, remanufacturing, you need to consider for disassembly, recyclability, disposability, remanufacturability, reusability, etc. Design for societal impact, like social dimensions, operational safety, like how safe it is to operate like machines and tools. Sometimes they end up like hurting the operators. Health and wellness effects, like ergonomics is one of the sciences where we study about impacts of like such things on the human body, like physical or even mental also, right? And there are like some wellness effects also, like VOCs and things we discussed, or if something has like a physical as well as psychological impact, that needs to be I think revised and reconfigured to have like a minimal impact, right? Ethical responsibility, social impacts, design for functionality, functional improvements, service life, durability, modular, like ease of use, maintainability. You may be aware like these modularity is one of the qualities where you can bringing like a multiple of the same like a object in multiple numbers and configure your stuff. So all the sizes and fittings and all of those details are similar and universal. So it is easier for you to modulate in multiple like numbers and quantities. Okay, so easily you can make use of like this thing. Upgradability, ergonomics, reliability, functional effectiveness. So they all come under here. Design for manufacturability, manufacturing methods. Okay, the most less impacting methods. Packaging solutions, because one of the most like a waste producing element from like a manufacturing industry is the packaging, right? So an extra focus is needed on this one. Assembly, transportation, storage, and then design for resource utilization and economy. Energy efficient like systems, material utilization, maximum like utilization and optimization, use of renewable resources of energy, purchasing at like a market value, installation and training cost, operational cost, etc. So if you see this DFS actually encompasses like a variety of like a strategies inside this. Okay, and they are all essential. It depends like what to choose and how to choose, etc. That depends on your context, what you are designing in what kind of context and scenarios. So based on that you can take a call and you can make a prioritization of these like strategies, and then you can take up your like a design project. Yeah, so ESG aspects and their overlaps. So yeah, from short-term approaches to the long-term approaches at the major level like city level, urban planning level and all of that. Okay, the impacts are there. The extraction of raw materials. Okay, on the LCA like a side, if you see so this is the stage which talks about material extraction. Okay, so it's the first step in products life cycle. From there you get your resources like ingredients, and then you go for like the second stage, semi-finished goods, and followed by finishing and assembly of the final product, its usage, maintenance, finally end of life activities. This final step comprises final garbage disposal following proper treatment and material recycling at the end of it. You see, comes to the end. So LCA, In order to identify the best overall solutions, life cycle thinking is a method for addressing and analyzing all of these activities in terms of risks, possibilities, and value generation. Internal decision makers from R&D, like designers who are sitting on the table, engineers, it is helpful for them. In manufacturing units, what materials and combinations they are going to use. Marketing people, management are all involved in such exercises, as well as external stakeholders including suppliers, retailers, customers, consumers, and members of the general public. So analysis steps are calculating the overall energy and material inputs, environmental outputs, addressing any potential effects on the environment, and analyzing the outcomes throughout the life of the product, and even at the end of it. When attempting to control greenhouse gases, GHGs, which are caused by the amount and source of the energy utilized, a life cycle assessment is performed. The total greenhouse gas emissions from all life stages of a process, conduct, or service may be added up using this sort of analysis. So that's where LCA is an important tool. It is simpler to identify where changes may be done to minimize emissions, because if you know at different stages where to make where has the a largest impact, okay, you can definitely pinpointedly work on this and improve the this whole value chain. For instance, when a car is driven and fuel is consumed, greenhouse gases are emitted, but they are also released during the extraction of oil to make the gasoline and during the transportation of the oil. So you can calculate which one has how much of potential and how much of correction you can do. So LC may also be honed to evaluate alternatives for a certain environmental concerns. This can entail limiting development on environmentally valuable areas or lowering greenhouse gas emissions. Focusing on a single pollutant or waste is generally easier to control than trying to keep track of all waste environmental effects. So maybe you can go one by one. That's what it is suggesting, because if you are able to address one properly, definitely it's going to improve the whole a system, and then gradually all of them improved, gradually the whole system will get improved. LC can be advantageous both economically and ecologically. It accomplishes this by examining several choices to enhance various phases of product's life cycle. Options that first appear to be pricey may end up being less expensive than expenditures for the complete LCA. So now we are entering to the third topic, thinking alternatives and innovation. So we'll see the sustainable development practices, what they propagate. It begins with the people-centric approach, then consideration about the planet, of course, overall peace and prosperity, partnerships, collaborations, and prosperity overall. So this together, forms, the SD, the 5 P's, they are listed over here. So around this, how things can be developed. So this being as a conceptual framework, Paris Agreement's SDG 13 on climate change refers to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, saying that it is the principal international intergovernmental platform for negotiating the global response to climate change. However, fulfilling the SDGs would need significant structural changes in many facets of society. Evidence show that international development objectives, such as those centered on public health, can speed progress towards complicated development goals. This brings up the crucial issue of how to structure plans to attain the 17 SDGs. So, in implementation, there are challenges and conditions. So, where to kind of intervene, that also may depend upon a country to country, right? Inside country, also state to state, right? So, considering those points and bringing them, for alternative thinking and innovative ways in which those can be taken up. Many writers have demonstrated the interdependence and intricate connection of human, technological, and natural systems, connect those three things, and including the goals of Paris Agreement. However, the current research do not specifically highlight how the studies should be implemented. So this implementation actually, is left, on countries, to devise their own way. So you may be aware, in India, it is the a Niti Aayog, is this nodal agency, at Indian level, at the Indian country level, which actually plans for the implementations. Okay, and then it delegates those implementation techniques and tools to the states, and then at state level also things happen at district level, and then again the lowest administrative level, and then again gradually it gives its feedback a loop to the above, and then if there is any other improvement or correction, then again it percolates from top to bottom and then bottom to up. Okay. So a comprehensive policy strategy, is needed to accomplish, like each SDG in order to bridge, like those gaps, because those gaps are, like a local, like a gaps, and they are not, we cannot generalize or universalize, these, like a details. Similar to the far more straightforward Millennium Development Targets, a number of policy initiatives are required to accomplish each SDG, and yeah. So for the so these are the challenges which you may face if you are kind of like a part of like in an organization which is working for implementation of SDGs. You maybe you are well aware of these. Maybe in one of your assignments or the final project, you share like those and look for the local solutions in what ways like you may deal or you have already dealt with in the in the past. Okay, so maybe you can talk about your solutions given. So semi-modular action agenda, okay, that may be created by separate yet independent government components, can be used to arrange SDGs interventions, right? Yeah, for problem solving, transparent communication and mobilization of stakeholders. We have studied before. Yeah, since the three key trade-offs are resolved, so yeah, like we saw those at the cusp of like these ESEs, it's a trade-off between like these, and collectively there is a trade-off, and the final things happens over here in the middle, that we call it as SD, right? So this what these trade-offs can be, you can see here on in this table that is given on the left side. So for transformation, like one principal line ministries involved in the transformation, like education, science and technology, family and social affairs. So three ministries we see over here. And then SDG interventions. So what all are possible through these, like early childhood development, primary, secondary education, vocational trainings, higher education, social protection systems and labor standards, they all can come and become a group for this thing. And intermediate outputs, education and human capital development, right? So relation to the SDGs, like you can see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like those, like this data is fed over here. Similarly, we have, like most of the major, industrial, like sectors like health, building, construction, energy, agriculture, environment, forest, health, etc. Then urban transportation, water, sanitation, etc. And S&T telecom. Yeah, so we know the motto is leave no one behind. So transformation 1, education, gender inequality, then health, well-being and demography, energy decarbonization, sustainable industries, then food, land, water resources like natural domain, and then sustainable cities and communities, and then finally overall transformation and sustainable development. Relationships you can see over here. Well, this kind of data are all available in majority of the books which I have shared in the description. Maybe you guys can have a look. And UN has released several reports and documents. Okay, maybe you can refer them for more detailed data and case studies, specific case studies from different countries. That will be helpful for your projects. The development of human capital via education fosters economic growth, because once educated, you may be possessing certain like skills, okay, and you may contribute directly to some industry, some sector, and like make use of that to earn for yourself, and in turn like becoming a responsible citizen and a productive like a person in the overall system. The eradication of severe poverty, adequate employment opportunities, and the eradication of gender and other disparities. So with the overall education, like a purpose is far larger than just skilling and giving you some knowledge. Is an overall like effort for improvement at the social level, at the human level. 3 sets of initiatives are included in the first transformation that we have seen. Yeah, so that's why strengthening educational institutions is a must for any country's overall growth and development in the future, right? If you are strong in science and technology, if you are strong in education, if you are strong in research, definitely you will have like a advantage to proceed faster and longer in terms of like a new adoptions and developments. Even in high income societies, investments are in early childhood development have lagged behind the benefits to children's cognitive and emotional growth that last into the adulthood. So these have like a potential to like affect till the whole of your life. The foundation of education systems is access to high quality elementary and secondary education. So beginning from like a level 0, like till the like a top like a level primary, secondary, tertiary, and all of those like education levels, one must go for like a quality education. Yeah, so several schemes and programs are like coming. So in this one you can see transformation one suggested by like this thing, international student assessment of organization of economic cooperation and improvement. It calls for improved teacher preparation, because the teachers are the like a pillars of like education. They are the ones who are empowering more and more like a people, right? So the basic and must investment should happen at this stage. Curriculum development, like most efficient and state of the art curriculum, so that the latest like a piece of information and knowledge can be given. Ongoing assessment of learning outcomes. Okay, so it should be kept on like a like a checks and measures to improve it. In spite of the fact that they facilitate the transition from school to the workforce, boost lifetime wages and lessen inequality, vocational training, school to work programs and higher educations are undeveloped in the majority of the nations, and this is why this must be like a focused. These initiatives work together to develop human capital, which help directly to many of the SDGs and indirectly also to others. Transformation 2, important investments in health and well-being, because only a healthy person physically and mentally will be in a right state of mind to contribute whatever he or she is actually working or doing, right? So it's very essential. Otherwise the person is going to get like a disease and condition will become a further like a burden on the society. Yeah, so positive health outcomes and well-beings. Yeah, in order to effectively prevent and treat infections, infectious diseases, illnesses, provide treatments for maternity, neonatal, child health. So beginning from the like a initial days of the birth of a child, till the early ages, this health security also should be like a granted as a must, and manage non-communicable diseases so easily. And mental health, you can see it has found like mentioned here. Basic surgery, health systems must place a strong emphasis on primary health care. Yeah, because it has like a major positive impact on the health outcome. Okay, so such initiatives must be promoted. To improve cleanliness, the first example, you may be aware, Government of India, like some time back, took it as a national challenge, to clean our vicinity. So that's one of the like most amazing, like a national drives in the recent, like a decades, and there was, like a significant improvement. Well, there is a lot more to do, but this persistent effort, from all the stakeholders is definitely needed to achieve the goal. Reduce intake of cigarettes, alcohols, and other dangerous, drugs, to reduce them and remove them. Finally, abstinence from the risky behavior. Okay, so like such things like cause like issues individually, and finally if an individual is affected, and the whole system is getting affected. Yeah, in accordance with the Paris Agreement, this transformation, the third one, intends to eliminate industrial pollution of the soil, water and air. So all sorts of pollutions and how these can be eliminated completely. Provide universal access to contemporary energy sources and decarbonize the energy systems. Yeah, so assuring access to contemporary energy services entails giving 1.1 billion people access to electricity through grid expansions or microgrids. So instead of like having very large like industrial or energy generation units, we can go for small like a multiple ones at different like places. I think that is one of the like a distributed economic systems like models, which helps like a concentrated like investment rate or concentrated like a consumption of resources to distributed consumption and investment, right? So that's the most efficient one. It helps reducing the migration of people and migration of resources also. Yeah, so transition from fossil fuels to, of course, to the like a carbon neutral like energy sources, like natural sources we know, like wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, etc., which have like a low impact. Well, energy storage being still one of the like a polluting ones, but I am sure in the recent in the few years we will have like much greener solutions of those type also. Yeah, must increase the efficiency of their ultimate energy uses, which include transportation, building, heating, etc., cooling, HVACs, industrial energy uses. Yeah, permanent hunger, malnutrition, related to that, transformation 4, and obesity are now caused by land use and food system. The quarter of greenhouse gas emissions, over 90% of water use, that is scarcity weighted. Okay, so those also require like transformative change. And with regard to interventions, this transformation has the greatest potential for trade-offs. The loss of biodiversity and the shortage of water may be made worse by increase of agriculture productivity, because agriculture consumes a huge amount of water. Okay. First intervention area focuses on fisheries and production. So in this one, but depending upon the local or regional requirement, one can focus, and then this has direct relation to the relation to the food systems also. Yeah, protecting biodiversity, enhancing it, with the help of connecting with the agriculture. You may be aware, like rice fields in Assam or many other like countries also, they use natural like elements such as fish and like ducks, for like insect, like handling insects, right? And their droppings further help like boosting fertility of the like a soil, right? So it's a win-win situation, right? So in the both hands you can see like it helps like a biodiversity. So like such local solutions should be devised to help our forest soils, peat bogs, wetlands, savannas, and other like places. For the fifth one, approximately 55% of the world's population lives in cities and other metropolitan regions. Well, in India also, conventionally, this percentage is increasing slowly over the last decades. It has increased, tremendously, and even smaller towns are growing into the bigger towns are growing into the cities are growing into the megapolises and things like that. So this overall, like a percentage of like a population living in cities, in the urban areas, is increasing, tremendously. So there is balance what is needed. Yeah, and that population actually requires like all sorts of facilities and amenities, water supply, sanitation, educate, sewage, waste disposal, etc. Along with health, education, and like a livelihood, employment, and all of those opportunities. Mobility, another like important like a factor, transportation and mobility. Okay, because this also contributes sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly to the like a JGs and overall like energy consumptions, overall like a impact, overall like a LC analysis also. Okay, so how this can be brought into an efficient system. Yeah, so improved efficiency, preventing excessive land conversions. Cities need to encourage more compact, safe, and healthy settlements, so that there are like a sufficient habitable like areas. Yeah, every sector of the economy is being affected by artificial intelligence. So like using like state of the art technologies, like AI, machine learning, and all also may like help you, empower you in going for like solving like these tough solutions, tough like situations. Okay, with efficient solutions, right? So with the help of like such like technologies, we can like go for like their applications in all of the sectors. No need to take their names, but I think applications are really like immense, like a potential. Digital technologies have potential to enhance market matching, cut resource intensive manufacturing costs, minimize emissions, increase productivity, broaden access, enable the use of big data, increase accessibility to public services. Additionally, they may enhance resource efficiency, encourage the circular economy, enable net zero carbon energy systems, assist in monitoring and safeguarding ecosystem, performing other vital tasks also to support of like all of the SDGs combined. So putting them all into the practice, you can see design and technology missions with goals, goal-based governance and financial organization, social activism to alter attitude and conduct, international relations and diplomacy, for partnership, financing and peace, essential, for all of them to work smoothly, plan for action for science, ability to create transformations, time-based standards, participant involvement and co-design. This is one of them like aspects where the user himself and herself becomes part of the system to design what kind of system they want. Okay, so instead of coming and finding solutions from elsewhere and implementing in here, you can involve your own users and communities in devising the solution. That's the most efficient way of one of the design techniques. We call it frugal design. Okay, where participant himself and herself is a part of like a design process, and that's where you can optimize and improve efficiency of your design. Lastly, policy monitoring, assessment and tracking. So with this, we have come to this module. So thank you all for joining. See you next time.